Baldur's Gate 3 opened the floodgates of furious video game studios who claim this game should not be seen as the new standard for games, as it is an anomaly, an unviable mode of game development. Blah, blah, blah. Some think this is purely because they want to protect their lazy ways of creating games and just to trick people out of their money. But what if it's not the whole picture? What if there is an intricate web of systems, processes, peer pressure by made-up certifications, which basically lock these studios into this impossible situation where they are simply not able to think outside of their tiny little boxes that they put themselves in? Welcome to the world I come from, the world where I was at the very edge but had to learn about the deepest pits of software development by these massive companies. Hi, I'm Kalman Caraway and welcome to this video. This one is kind of special for me. I wanted to make it for quite some time but could not find the proper winds and the seas of social awareness for it until now. Thank you, Larian Studios, for that. A few years back, I was suffering through the mandatory training materials of an IT company, while my brain was constantly trying to rebel against the whole subject. Constantly asking myself, why do I even need to read this? Like, I'm just gonna pick up codes and fix some tech issues. I'm not a software developer, I'm not a programmer. I have nothing to do with this whole thing. Little did I know that a few hours into one of the 11 hours long lessons, I would suddenly have an epiphany, a revelation from the universe shedding light on the pitch black heart of software development, from which, to be honest, almost all of today's gaming woes are slithering forth. First of all, you must understand that these games are not products anymore. Companies don't just put together a product and sell it and hope for the best. No, these, basically all of them, are projects. Projects to create long-lasting continuous streams of income for the publishing studios. You see, when a project like this starts, these massive companies have a certain pre-designed method which must be followed by them. If you have never had any contact with these corporate entities, then you most likely have never heard about things like Agile or ITIL or Sigma 6, Lean, etc., etc. These are pre-established structures for companies for all their activities, from building up an entire service project for another company in outsourcing, from software development, all of them. These structures have been designed as the so to say the best methods, the best practices that worked for other companies. Every project, every plan, every step of the progress, every double check, everything has a supervisor, a specialist, a manager, a master. They even use the term ninja for some of these specialists. Each and every step in the life of the project is atomized, supervised to a level that there is basically no room for deviation, which means no room for any intuitive ideas, any really organic development. Everything is forced into these structures because these are called the best practices. So companies think that, oh, when we follow the best practice, then the result will be the best. But basically, when they are all doing the same, when all of them are the best, then none of them are. Now, you might ask, why would anything like this be implemented? Well, apart from the fact that they think that this is the best way, for example, in the case of ITIL, that is specifically considered a collection of best practices in the business. And the mentality comes with it that you do want to use the best practices, don't you? You don't want to be one of the losers who don't use the best practices, the best ideas. You do want to follow the ideas established by your predecessors, the big boys, your betters, basically. So you see, there's this weird peer pressure developed in this whole thing that everybody wants to be the best, and basically those who don't follow these rules are somehow pushed out or neglected or frowned upon. That why don't you want to follow the best practices? So it's kind of a cult-like mentality, or mixed with kindergarten playground level mentality. So it's really strange, especially when you're talking about companies making billions and billions per month. So one of the forms of this weird peer pressure is certificates. You basically get certified for applying these methodologies, these processes within your company. You get these made-up, worthless digital certificates that show that you did actually force all your employees through lengthy training sessions, which have nothing to do with their day-to-day jobs, and will just confuse them most of the time. It literally just confuses a lot of people in these companies. But this way you can actually say that you are one of the big boys because you have one of these nice shiny certificates in digital format. And this shiny certificate is going to open doors for your company, as all big bosses who don't know anything about how to write a line of code will flock to you and see that you did that made-up thing, which they heard means you are one of the cool ones. It's really ridiculous. It's made-up things about made-up things for people who believe made-up things. And that's how a huge part of business operates nowadays. Now, apart from these made-up badges, we have the actual software development process. For this, we have the beautiful example of Agile. It's basically a collection of methodologies, a specific process on how to manage such a software development project and how the whole development should go. Now, before any of the Agile fans would start burning holes in my head with their laser eyes, Agile in itself could be good. It could be beneficial, but the way it's being used today by a lot of companies, it just turns into something horrible. And this horrible aspect of it comes from the fact that these developer companies or their publishers basically do not want the project to end. So that's why they're not making products and sell them and be on their merry way. They create projects that go on as long as possible, preferably indefinitely. Now you see, in the Agile process, I'm just going to very simplify this for the people because I don't have 10, 12 hours to go through the whole training material. Just the main gist of it is there are these cycles in the process. They have a basic version of the application they are working on, and this is not just about games. This is about the general software development. So any kind of software that a company uses for their billing or ticketing or reporting things and all that, this goes on in a lot of places. So they have these cycles. They have a rudimentary version of the application or the system. They check what's wrong with it, what's going on, are there any bugs. They discuss what needs to be improved, what needs to be fixed. Then they go into the part of the cycle when they start fixing it, and then they get back to checking it again, and then find the new problems and all that. And this would be fine if it would end at a certain point. And they would say that, okay, the program is now bug-free, works fine, and we can publish it as it is because everything is all right. This was basically the old school way. Before the times they had the opportunity to fix everything post through the internet channels, they had to have the full software on the disk, on the floppies, on whatever they carried it on. They had to have the fully operational software on it, otherwise it was unsellable. So that's why the Agile methodology with the testing and checking back and going through these cycles could be good. But now they use it in a different way. Basically, in the new way the Agile is used for the last few years, there's one rule. Deadline is God. If they set a certain deadline, it's really difficult to move that. Because they promise to the client who's paying for the application that, yeah, by this time you will get the software and you can use it and your company can run perfectly with it. Now, the problem is that this deadline is set by people who don't know anything about software development, who don't know anything about fixing bugs, testing, and how this whole thing goes and how much time is needed to write the code for these applications. Meaning that the masters, the ninjas, or whatever specialists in the Agile methodologies simply make decisions without know-how, without actually knowing what's going on. I had conversations with people who were, for example, in the testing part of the Agile process, and they were furious. Repeatedly, they have been assigned time slots and time frames to work on something that exceeded not just their workday, not just 8 hours or 12 hours of work, but actually the 24 hours of a single day. They were like sitting there, hey, you just assigned us like 48 hours of work with a deadline of 24 hours. It's insane. It's ridiculous, basically. Now, apart from this insanity of it, that people not knowing how the whole thing goes, with the deadline set, they are forced, and sometimes they really don't care about it, but they are put in a situation when they have to publish basically a skeleton of the original application. Now, this would have been in old times a bad thing, because we have a half-finished product, but we have to publish it, and then, okay, then maybe we can fix it in post. That would be understandable. But nowadays, it's not even a problem for them. That's the plan. They say that, okay, here's the program, here's the system that you paid for, and whenever the client says that, hey, this is like half finished, a whole bunch of stuff doesn't work in it, and they report back to the developer team that, hey, you need to fix this, this is not what we paid for, then they say, okay, if you don't like the features in the application or in this new system, then we can make it bespoke to your needs. So they don't fully acknowledge that there's a problem. They just sort of shift the focus on the needs of the client, that, oh, you need something else in it. Okay, let us just change the application in a way that it will fit your needs perfectly. And that's how the cycle begins. They fix a few issues, they patch the software a bit, they go through the testing, is everything fine and all, and they provide the update to the customer. The customer sees that, yeah, let's say they had 12 problems, 3 of them have been fixed. Okay, it's a bit better, but still there are several other issues in the system, and they have noticed that there are some new issues in the system as well. Okay, then let's check it again, update again, fix some bugs, send it back to the customer, or just update it remotely, and okay, now you fixed 3 more issues, but there's again another new issue in it, apart from the things that still have not been fixed. And you see the cycle keeps going on and on and on. They are fixing a bit. From the overall number of issues, there's a bit less, but there's always some new issue coming in. And this can be legit from programming errors, that they don't know how to focus on it, how to fix some issues, or they don't pay attention that one change causes another problem. But when you have been working with these systems for several years and you still see the same cycles going over and over and over again, you kind of see the pattern. It's like with these infinite fractions that you get the 0.9999999, you never reach the number 1. It's always a tiny fraction before the final end result, before the final product. And this can go on for years, like 5, 6, 7 years, until the client says that, okay, this whole thing is simply not working. The features we were asking for are still not fully implemented in the application. We are going to look for another company to provide us with a different system. Now, this is where the change comes in, because the original developer or publisher of the application do not want to let go their milking cow. So they say that, okay, let's clear the whole thing. We are going to give you the new version of this application. It's based on a whole new infrastructure, a whole new framework. It doesn't have all the issues that you had with the previous application. So it's a brand new, up-to-date, top-of-the-line version of the software, like 2.0, or they like to give some fancy name for it, like next generation or whatever. If you've been long enough in the industry, then you will see that they always have these catchphrases that catch on with every company. So if some company has an application with whatever next generation, all of them have a next generation application, or they come up with some extra name like Omega or Alpha or 3000 or whatever marker or label they can put on an application or a project or anything. All of them start using it because they don't want to be left out of the club of the cool people. It's really childish. So A client is presented with the 2.0 version of the software, which indeed doesn't have a lot of the old issues that the previous program had. But it's still not perfect, because it's just a new skeleton with a new structure. And the cycle starts again. And I've seen this for decades going on with various applications, that always a half-finished program is provided, and entire companies need to work with these, and they just keep fixing and fixing and fixing, making it slightly better, and after a while the patience wears off, and they have to jump to a different version of the application, and just gaining more time, and the whole thing is really ridiculous. And if you look at it with honest, basic common sense, then you realize that, yeah, this is a scam. This is pathetic. This is like a low-level scam of between major companies. Now, I'm not saying that all companies do this. I'm not saying that all developer companies are responsible for this, but I'm saying that the methodologies that are pushed on them is locking them into this not exactly honest way of business. Now, how does this connect to video games? That's the interesting part. It's the same mentality, the same way of producing projects. Because these games are not designed to be products that you just sell and you're happy with the results. They are designed as projects. Just the same way as the other software for the major companies, they plan on publishing a half-finished game. If there are some major game-breaking things in it, like really huge bugs, that's why you have the day one patch, which is usually at least half the size of the full game. Because by the deadline of the publishing, what was reached, they know that it's impossible to play with this game. So throughout the whole delivery and distribution process, they are already working on it and trying to get the patch finished for the day one release, when the shops actually already have the applications, the disks and whatever prepared in their system and in their storages, but they are waiting for the official go sign. The developers working on the patch to make it usable on day one, because they know it was half finished. And after the day one, basically with purchase of the game, you entered in this live service. That's why you have to be always online with the game, that they are gathering data from the use of the game, and they can make it bespoke to your needs and just fixing whatever they left out of the game. And then to get the money flowing, that's why they have the microtransactions in it, that you can select how you want to see the game with skins and whatever animations and all that, and they make it bespoke to your needs for that little extra money. And that's why you have the DLCs. That is just a continuation. Instead of making a new complete version of the game, they just keep continuing the development of the original game, adding in material or just unlocking material that was already in the game, and getting more money out of the players. And actually, this is what gamers are fed up with. One of the Forbes articles mentioned that it's not worth even starting to play Baldur's Gate 3 because the company doesn't have any plans on creating DLC for it. Gamers hate DLCs. They hate that they have to pay extra to get the full version of the game, which should have been in the game to start with. And this is why games like Elden Ring, Baldur's Gate 3, and other such massive successes are scaring them, because these games are products that have been designed, planned, created, fixed, finished, published, and everyone is happy with them. They don't plan on a huge number of DLCs or microtransactions or anything like that. They just made a product and they sold it, which means that they were basically made the old school way of making games and not the new wave of money-hungry leech mentality. And this is scaring the big ones. This is really scary for them. They do not want to change back. They do not want to create quality products which can earn their reward by themselves, because they know they are unable to create anything worthy of admiration. This was the reason why they had to resort to trickery. And by now, they are so entrenched, encased, entombed in their made-up best practices that they are simply unable to break out. Baldur's Gate 3 scared them, shook them, terrified them to their greedy little dark cores. They whine and scream that this game should not be treated as a new standard, but their wailing is powerless. In the world of business, power is in the hands of the one with the money. Gamers have the money, and with it, the power to decide which game and which company is worthy of survival. And do not be fooled, indie developers are not pushed out by anyone. They have been creating complete and finished products, and for years the gamers appreciated them for it, appreciated their passion. So that's what it is. Impossible systems created to basically cripple any form of originality, and greedy mentality poisoning something that was created to make everything flow better and easier in the software development world. And yeah, that's the point. So it's not just greed, it's a very twisted system that has been basically carved into stone by these companies, and they do not know how to get out of it. And that's why Larian Studios, they never even started with these. They kept to the old way of creating games, and it worked fine. Yes, they do run the risk that maybe the next game will be a flop, but do we see that? No. Their games are popular. People like them, and it all goes well without microtransactions and any kind of greedy methods. So yeah, that would be it. Whew, it feels really good. I really needed to get this out of my system because this has been bugging me for maybe 5 or 6 years now, ever since I've seen these materials. And it's really disheartening, but it's really pleasant and encouraging to see that some companies are still making proper products and do not focus on just getting more and more money out of people while not delivering any quality results. So yeah, I don't know if you agree with my views. This is just based on my experience. But if you do, then drop a like or comment about your experiences. If you're a disgruntled ex-employee or from a developer company, then I'm very happy to see your comments about this, especially if you're enraged by this methodology that just cripples everything with these companies or results in extreme crunch times, which we know is already destroying the lives of a lot of people. But anyway, I hope you found this video useful, and yeah, see you soon.